It was winter of 2014 for me. And I go to this Hillsong concert with a few of my friends, and there were people from everywhere around the city. So it wasn't just a specific church, it was a lot of people, thousands of people in a room. And one of my favorite settings is a worship service. And so for an entire night we were worshiping, and it's like everyone's on the same page and everyone's loving Jesus. And I found myself, the longer this went on, to not be content. And I couldn't really figure that out. It didn't really make sense to me. I'm at a worship service. Everything is about Jesus, and yet I wasn't content. And so I kind of stood there, and I just kind of closed my eyes, and I was like, God, what's going on? And he said, Becca, I want more for this city. And so I sat down, and I got my journal out, and I bring my journal everywhere because you never know when God's going to talk. And so this is what God said to me that night. He said, Becca, my heart is for Kansas City. My heart is burdened for every soul of Kansas City. And I'm not going to stop working until everybody in this city knows who I am. And it was weird because it was just like, it was like this wake-up call in my head. And it was like God was saying, wake up, Becca. I have something to talk to you about. And in this series, God is giving lots of people wake-up calls. And in this series, we're talking about how Israel has been in exile and how he's raising up different leaders to be able to help out with each situation. And so write this in your notes. This is a big idea. Extraordinary times requires extraordinary courage from ordinary exiles. Now, last week, Rob talked about Daniel, and Daniel really stood out as a leader because he wouldn't bow down his identity to what culture said he should bow down to. And this week, we're talking about Esther. Now, Esther is an interesting character. Both of her parents have actually passed away. And so Mordecai is her cousin, and Mordecai actually adopts her. And so the only thing that's really impressive on her resume is that she's gorgeous. She literally has nothing going for her except for she's gorgeous. And if she was to live in today's age, I'm sure some cheesy man would come up to her and say, did it hurt? And then she would say, did what hurt? And then he would say, when you fell from heaven. And if you've never heard that pickup line, girls, praise Jesus. If you have, use that line as a guy. This is your permission to not use that anymore. You will not get girls that way, and you will not get your first date that way. And as we're going to see this week, Esther is beautiful, and she's beautiful with a purpose. So right in today's idea, ordinary exiles have extraordinary impact when they wake up to what God is doing. Now, in order to understand what is going on in this story, we kind of need to get some descriptions of who is in the story. There are 4 major people in this story. So write this in. King Xerxes, he is the king of Persia. He's kind of the man who's taking care of business, and he's the man who's making the shots. Esther, she is the orphan, but remember, her parents passed away, and Mordecai adopts her. So she's the orphan who's going to become queen of Persia. Mordecai is her cousin who adopts her. And Haman is the anti-Semite official. Now, an anti-Semite is basically someone who completely opposes the Jews. Now, with Israel, they are here. Now, the king is having a spat. The king of Persia just had a spat with his wife, and the spat was over this. He was holding a huge party, and he wanted everyone to see how beautiful his wife was, and she didn't show up. And so out of a drunken decision of embarrassment, he says, I'm done with her. Get rid of her. And the next day, he actually could not reverse that decision because whatever the king says stays. You don't reverse what the king says. And so it opens up this position for a new queen. Now, a new queen could have been anyone. So they gathered all of the virgins, and they basically gave them beauty treatments. Now, this reminds me of something. This reminds me of The Bachelor, which if you've ever seen that show, One guy literally picks from 20-some girls, and whoever looks the best and pleases them the best, they get picked. And so these women come in from all over the place, and they get these beauty treatments and spa treatments for 12 months. And then they get their shot to date the king. Now, it was finally Esther's turn, and even before Esther got her turn with the king, she impressed everyone. All the attendants in the palace were impressed with her, and when it finally became time for her date with the king, he loved her. And so in Esther 2:17, it says this, the king loved Esther more than any other woman. He declared her as queen. So she cozies up in her nice little palace, and she can drink whatever she wants, and she can nap whenever she wants, and that's like my heaven. And she gets basically 24/7 room service. But remember what the idea is for today. Ordinary exiles have extraordinary impact when they wake up to what God is doing. Now, at this point, Esther has no idea what she's in for. She has no idea what's going outside of the walls. Because here's what's happening outside of the walls. Haman, remember the anti-Semite, the person who opposes the Jews, he gets elected by the king to be one of the highest officials in the area. And when that happened, the king also said, because he's the highest official, anyone who he passes will bow down and show respect. Problem. Mordecai is the attendant at the gate. So he's one of the king's attendants at the gate. And every time Haman passes by, he does not bow down. Now, the reason he doesn't bow down is because Haman's not his God. He has allegiance to Yahweh, to God in heaven. So he's not going to bow down to anyone less than Yahweh in heaven. So this happens day after day, and he keeps doing this. And eventually Haman gets mad, and he says, hey, why are you not bowing down to me? Why are you not showing respect to me? It's the king's orders for you to bow down to me. And Mordecai said, no, I'm not bowing down. I'm not showing you respect. You are not Yahweh. And so Haman gets to the point where he's so mad. He said, I'm going to kill you. But remember, he's an anti-Semite. And so he finds out who Mordecai actually is. He's a Jew. And so he not only wants to kill him now, but he wants to kill the entire race. And so he literally goes one step further, and he goes to the king. And he said, hey, there's a group of people, king, that aren't playing by our rules. They like to be separate from everyone else. They just don't like to live how we want them to live. So it is in your best interest, king, to not let them live. The king, not really knowing what is going on, says, all right, takes his ring off and hands it to him. Now there's a decree that says all the Jews must die in one day. Now let's stop right here for a second. In that time, the enemy of the Jews just made an attack. This is not the first time that the enemy has done this. This is not the first generation that the enemy has done this. The enemy from generation 1 all the way through is going to attack God's people. His job is to steal, kill, and destroy anybody that's in the people of God. And there are some people here today that feel like they are being attacked by the enemy. Maybe there's something going on in your family and just no resolution whatsoever. Maybe your kids are just kind of spiraling out of control, and it's like, what is going on? It's like, why are they making that decision? That's not how I raised them. I mean, there's some people that work that's like, what? Has my boss lost his mind? I'm not that bad of an employee. Why is there so much chaos? If you look at the news, it's like, how is the enemy getting away with this stuff? How is there so many attacks? And I want you to know something very important. When the enemy launches an attack, God has already settled the solution for victory. What Esther didn't know is that she was positioned in a specific place to be able to aid against this attack. Now, the attack goes out to the Jews. There is a letter that goes out and says, Jews, you are all going to die in one day. There will not be one person spared. It's not like the babies are going to live or, maybe the women are going to live. Everyone's done. And they're going to wipe them out in one day. And as you can imagine, think about the worst news that you've ever received in your life. That would devastate you. That would devastate you. And the Jews ended up wailing and weeping. They put on clothes for mourning even, which is the deepest sign of grieving. And so Mordecai sends out a letter to Esther. In that letter, it had the decree and also was explaining the situation that was going on. The fact that Haman had made a decree that everyone should die if you're a Jew. And it goes to Esther. And Esther reads it, and then she says, if I go to the king, and he doesn't hold out his golden scepter, which would be the sign that you live if you go into the presence of the king, if he doesn't hold that out, I'm dead. So in short, Esther said, no, I'm not going to the king, you're on your own. And then Mordecai gets this letter and sends one back. This is what it said. Don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you will escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? And if I could imagine Esther finally happened. Her wake-up call finally happened. Her wake-up call happened to where she was aware of what was going on in her generation, aware of the severity of the situation. And I believe this happens to everyone. And so write this in your notes. There are 3 wake-up calls that every believer goes through. Here's number 1. We need to wake up to our specific generation. God has chosen each person for each generation. So the fact that you are here today means that you were chosen to be in this generation. And I love that some people are like, oh, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is. Well, it's not like God just in heaven and sneezed because he was sick one day and then you showed up in your mother's womb. That's not what happens. He's not sick. He's not up there making mistakes. You are on purpose. When he chose to breathe life into you when you were in the secret place and go into your mother's womb, it was on purpose. There was not one mistake made when he did that. And here's the deal. There are issues in each generation that needs our attention. There are 3 issues that keep me up every single night almost. Number 1 is this. There is poverty 20 minutes away from us that is so devastating. That we have people every single night trying to brave the elements and not die. Every single night we have homeless people without food and without shelter and without comfort. This happens every day. Second thing that'll eat my lunch and not make me sleep at night is sex trafficking. Sex trafficking blows my mind. The average age of entry for a person in sex trafficking is 12 years old. What? When I look at that, I just think that is pure evil. There is nothing that should be going on like that in our world. That's crazy that 12-year-olds could be lured into this lifestyle. That's crazy that in our back steps, sex trafficking could be happening. Did you know that Kansas City, our city, is in the top 5 most active places for sex trafficking? That's insane. That'll keep me up at night. Thinking about the 12-year-olds, thinking about the 14-year-olds, thinking about the 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds, it doesn't matter. Thinking about those victims. And number 3, teenagers, I know some of us have like this weird vibe about teenagers. I don't. Teenagers have it really, really tough. If you think about it, when you were raised, you did not have all the technology in your face. They have so many things vying for their affection and vying for their attention. And so many people with these weird belief systems and bad belief systems and just, well, this feels good, so I'm going to do it. And this seems right, so I'm going to do it. And these teenagers these days have to figure out what's right, what's wrong, and how to decipher between the two. Our teenagers need prayer. And if you're a parent in the room of a teenager, you need to know that I pray for you. Because it is not easy. That's not an easy task. But I want to remind you that the teenagers don't have an easy task either. They're living in a time where the enemy is attacking them. And so here's the deal. In our generation, we have a lot of issues. And that can be overwhelming sometimes. But I want you to know that you are here because of that. You are God's A-team to be able to combat that issue. You are not God's B-team. You are not God's C-team. You are not God's bench player. God chose you for such a time as this in this generation to be able to stand up to the things that the enemy is trying to attack this generation with. You are it. You are the answer. You are A-team. And sometimes I get caught in this thing where it's like, well, I'm not Daniel in the Bible. I'm not fighting off lions, and I'm not, sitting in, some fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I'm not like Paul and sitting in prison, and I'm not Stephen who's sitting there getting stoned and looking up and seeing heaven open. I'm not Rosa Parks, and I'm not like tired one day and I'm not moving. I'm not Martin Luther King, and I'm not like starting all of these revolutions and revivals. And I prayed about that one day, and God said, no, you're not. Because you weren't made to be that. You were made to be you for this generation and for such a time as this. And we need to know, as a people of God, we were made for such a time as this. And so here's number 2, what we all need to wake up to. We need to wake up to our specific position of influence. Think about this for a second. Where has God placed you? What nation are you in? What state are you in? What city are you in? What neighborhood have you chosen to live in? Who are the members of your family? That's not an accident. Who are the people that are at your work? Who are the people that you hang out with just for hobbies? If you play sports, who's on your sports teams? The people that are in your circles of influence are who you are called to. And God has equipped you not only to be in this generation and not only with that specific position of influence, but he has also gifted you with talents and spiritual gifts so that you can be the light of the world in those situations. Who are the hurting people? Who are the people that just don't seem to be the same? Those are the people that you are called to. Number 3, we need to wake up to our specific action plan. Where's the enemy working at in your sphere of influence and in your circles? I mean, if you're a teacher, you have to know that your action plan every single day when you go into a school is to be able to help students learn the ways of the Lord. If you are a doctor, you have to know that you are the hands and feet of Jesus to be able to have revelation for other people that Jesus is still in the healing business. If you are business people in this room, then you have to know that you have an action plan to be able to act with integrity and act with honor so that when you lead people, they leave feeling encouraged, that you give them life, and they know that you are a safe person. If you're a stay-at-home parent in this room, thank you. It's important to help raise up this generation, to love our kids, to be able to tell our kids, Jesus loves you, and I love you, and I'm going to do whatever I can to be able to bring you up in the ways of the Lord so that you can be a leader for your generation. Students in the room, I don't want to leave you out either. I love you so much. Students, you have to understand that in your schools, you are the light. And you are not a small light, you are a big light to your schools because you have the attention. Sometimes teachers can't talk about it. I can't go in there and storm my way and start saying, Jesus, students, you are it. You are God's A-team to be able to bring Jesus back into the schools. You can pray. You can speak life. You can do whatever you need to do to be able to encourage people to know the Lord. And you have to know that we all have our specific action plan. We all have something to do. But here's an important piece. When Esther found out her news, she did something very specific. She did not just go powerhouse into the king's palace. That's not wise. What she did was she prayed. And she prayed for 3 days, and she not only prayed herself and fasted, but she called an entire people together, and they prayed and they fasted together. And at the end of the 3 days, she had her action plan ready to go. Now, I remember my action plan when I was at the Hillsong concert. I was sitting there, and I just remember God was just working and working, and He just wouldn't let me go. Wouldn't let me forget about these 3 issues. And I remember a year ago, I decided I'm not going to watch this thing from a distance anymore. This poverty issue, I can't watch it any longer from Olathe, which was where I was at. For me, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't just go down there and then come back and then go down there and come back. I had to live with them. I had to live amongst them because I knew that I can build better relationships with people if I'm living amongst them and saying, I'm doing this journey with you. I'm not going to just leave you at the end of the day. You can come next door and you can sit on my porch and we can talk about life. I decided a year ago that I'm not going to let the poverty issue just go unnoticed. I'm going to be the light of the world, which the Holy Spirit has told me that I am, and I'm going to place myself in downtown KC, which if I told you where I lived, I think some of you would probably fall on your face and pray for me right now, but I have the peace of the Lord. Because there is an issue of poverty that God has been tugging at me, and He's not letting go. And so I just decided anyone that walks down my sidewalk, that's an appointment from the Lord to pray. And if they want to talk, I'm all ears. But if they don't want to talk, then they need to know that they're being prayed for. This issue of sex trafficking, I'll be really honest with you guys. The only action plan I have on that is prayer right now. And if your only action plan is prayer at this point, that's awesome. Because I understand in prayer that your faith in prayer will move mountains out of the way. And so when I hear these articles and I hear like all these talks about sex trafficking, I know one thing for sure. My prayer will set people free. I pray for every single pimp in Kansas City that they would know the goodness and the kindness of the Lord. And that they would come to repentance. And that everyone that is underneath their bondage would know the love of Jesus, would interact with the presence of the Lord, and that they would find freedom. Because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. And they can have that. Teenagers, I know. What's the action plan? For me, I realized that teenagers need help. They can't just walk this journey with no mentors alongside them. They're not going to make it that way. They need people that have gone before them. They need people that have lived life in the faith longer than them to speak into their lives. Because when all of these voices are saying, no, this way, no, this way, no, this way, no, this way, no, this is a really good lifestyle. No, you should do this with your life. No, you should do this. They need a sounding board. And so I've placed myself in the student ministry on purpose. I'm not going to let teenagers on my watch just be, oh, okay, whatever. No. They're the generation that's leaders now and they will be in the future. And they need to be discipled. They need to know what God has in store for them. They need to know that they have open access to God and that they are powerful when they submit their lives to Jesus. And action plans are important for everyone. And I think one of the most brilliant action plans is Esther's. Esther did not have an easy assignment when she did her action plan. Esther knew she had to go to the king on behalf of her people. If she didn't go, the entire race was going to be wiped out in a single day, slaughtered. Nobody left. And so Esther, after her wake-up call, she realized, oh, this is what God had for me. So she gets up one day. I can only imagine what's going on in her mind. And she goes to the king's palace. And she waits. Remember, if the king doesn't hold out the scepter, that means life, then she'll be dead right there. So she goes up. She waits for the king's response. The king holds out the gold scepter and accepts her. So Esther, in her wisdom and humility and her gentleness, she waits for the right moment. She's not just powerhousing through stuff. She prayed. And when you pray, you know the right timing on how to intervene in certain issues. And so she holds a few banquets for the king. She does a lot of stuff in the meantime. And then she finally finds the right opportunity. And she said, hey, king, my people are going to be wiped out. Is there any way that you can reverse this decree of Haman's? He said, no, I can't reverse it. I signed it. My signet is on it. He said, but you can make a new decree. Whatever you want to do, I'll sign off on it, and then you can do it. Go defend your people. And I think it's brilliant because what she did is this. This can only happen in the Lord's wisdom. This fascinates me. What she did is she said, you can fight back. Jews, you don't have to bow down and be defenseless against Haman and his decree. You don't have to just take the death sentence. No, the Lord meant for you to live. You will live and not die. And so Esther said, on that day that Haman sent out a death sentence for you, you can fight back. You don't have to just take the death sentence. You can fight back against the enemy of this generation. And I can even hear God saying now, you can fight back. What the enemy does in his attack is not the final answer because he's not God. When God has the final answer, it's victory for God's people. And I firmly believe that if we take our positions of influence and we create our action plans out of prayer, then we will overturn what the enemy is trying to do in this generation, and we will see people live and not die under the oppression of the enemy. We will start to see families restored. We will start to see sex trafficking just cease to exist. There's no way it can stand up when actual people from God stand in the gap and they take their place and they say, no, enemy, you won't have the last word. Because I'm from God and I'm taking my place. And you won't do this on my watch. Now, I remember when I was at the Hillsong concert. And in my mind, I just saw all the people in the room. I just started to weep. And the reason I was crying is because there's thousands of people in this room and Kansas City still isn't saved yet. There's thousands of people in this room and people still don't know how good God is. We can change that. We can all team up as believers in this city, and we can change that. We can be the people of God as the light of the world that reaches out to other people so other people have hope. They can finally have peace. They can have salvation. They can know their worth. They can know their value. They can know their identity in Jesus. And the way we do that is we take our place. So here's 3 questions in closing that I want you guys to ask. Find someone that you're close to this week, or maybe it's a stranger. Could be a fun conversation. And ask these 3 questions. Why, out of any generation, were you born in this one? Why did God put you here? Why was I born for this time? Number 2, what positions of influence has God called you to in your little circles? Where is that? Why are you there? And number 3, what action plans is God calling you to carry out? Remember, these start in prayer. And then God will call you to do something specific. Now, once you write that, put down your piece of paper and pen and close your eyes. I'm declaring right now, and this is going to be my prayer for the rest of the year. This is my prayer for you guys, for the sake of God's will, for the sake of other people, and for the sake of our city. I'm commanding in the name of Jesus Christ for this generation to wake up. And we're going to do this together. I love you, Westside. Amen.
As a teenager in Dallas, Texas, there were 3 youth ministers who poured their life into mine. It made a difference. John Wyatt, Curtis French, and a young lady named Mary Parr, who is now named Mary Sutherland. I am so grateful that at Westside we have people like Ty and Aaron and Becca who love Jesus and are passionate about showing our students how to love Jesus as well. Would you like to give God a thank you for that? Yeah. I promised you 2 action steps when I was up earlier, and I want to give those to you right now. What is your action plan? What are you going to do to be on mission, to make a difference, to fight back in Kansas City? Here's the first one. Today at Lenexa at 12:15, following the 11 o'clock service, we're having a get-together called Explore Impact. It's lunch. It's lunch in a way that says, hey, how can we fight for the homeless? How can we get involved in sex trafficking and standing against it? How can we make a difference for the marginalized in our society? We already have 63 folks signed up to come. If you'd like free lunch and some motivation on how to go beyond giving, but to actually be involved in impact here in Kansas City, stick around today, 12:15. And number 2 action plan you could take today is this thing called Group Link. If you've been at Westside any length of time, you've already had this experience or it's coming. Wow, this place is big. There's a lot of people here. What's the antidote to that? The antidote to that is you can host your own group. You can test drive a group of your own for 8 weeks in your own home. If you have a heart for people, are willing to open your home, serve a few snacks, tell a few friends, you qualify as a host. And we're looking for new host groups and new host this fall. So if you'd like to do that, put the word host on your Connect card. If you're interested, drop it in the offering box, or you can talk to somebody out in the Commons today. 2 possible action plans to get involved. Explore Impact Lunch today, 12:15. Host a group. Hey, church, we are Westside Family Church. We are a church for this city.